Hey, welcome, Cattle Drive Live. Corey and I are back with what we promised the other night when we visited with the American Menagerie Association. This is, I guess, episode one of what we have dubbed Humble Beginnings, Corey.
You bet. We're going to go through and get I guess you'd say, a behind the scene look at some of the industry legends and kind of hear their stories and the humble beginnings that they all came from.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that this is going to necessarily be a timeline of each and every person that's going to be on here, but I tell you, for me, it's about getting out some stories that we feel like don't need to be left behind. It's finding out how these guys have stepped on stones, and there's going to be times I hope we get to hear some setbacks. I hope we get to hear about how they use those setbacks to get to the next big rock. And tell you what, we talk about big rocks, we talk about big names. We are starting, in my mind, with one of the biggest in the business. Uh, Brandon Horn is going to be with us today to give us his humble beginnings and how he got to the point of where he's at today with his business and his family and all the success that he's had. I know along the way there's been bumps and bruises, and hopefully we'll be able to learn a little bit of how he dealt with some of those to get where he's at today. So anyway, with that being said, Corey, I know there's going to be a lot of people traveling towards those junior nationals over the next few weeks, and our goal with these is to give them something to listen to on the weekend as they're driving, or maybe it's just in the barn preparing for the next week. But our goal over the next several weeks is going to give you something to listen to in the tractor or the feed truck or with your family on the way to a national junior show. So anyway, well, hey,
Absolutely.
welcome him in, and let's get fired up.
You bet. We're going to bring in Brandon.
Hey, hey.
Oh, how are you, man?
Oh, great.
Great.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks for
sir.
the opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. Brandon Horn, owner and operator of Horn Livestock in Anson, Texas. Brandon, just real quick, tell us a little bit of very quick, like Horn Livestock, where you're located, and the nuts and bolts, real quick, of what makes you tick.
Brandon Horn, my wife Breck, my son Jagger, and daughter Avon. We're in Anson, Texas. We try to hit all aspects of the business in the club calf industry. We raise slick sheared steers, basically is our motto. But we raise what we like to think our bulls have spoke for themselves in the past, and we have Charolais cross genetics that we are very humbled to have and very proud of. They've made our sole living for the past 17 years, and it's been quite humbling, honestly, to watch it all unfold for somebody as illiterate as I am to do what I do daily. So,
Yeah, awesome. Good deal. I can tell you, we're going to work through this tonight, and I know that along the way here, people are going to get tired of listening to you just say how humbling it is for you. But I know you on a personal level, as a lot of other people do too. You are very thankful for what the Lord's blessed you with. You're very thankful. You're very proud of your family. And I know if you get tired of hearing somebody say that, go ahead and turn it off right now, because it's as real right now. It'll be as real when we're done. That's just how he is, and that's what I love about my friend here. But let's get started in this deal, and let's take us to Southwest Oklahoma, Lukiba Sickles area. Your dad was probably one of the biggest figures in Southwest Oklahoma, and probably as integral in starting club calf trading as it's known today. Tell us a little bit about Larry Horn.
oh, obviously I was born into, but I didn't know it as a name. I know when I was old enough to know what was going on, my dad we would have cattle around, show cattle, obviously, and he was an ag teacher. never ever, when I was old enough to remember, that he was finding out later that he was kind of a hog man. But we had show cattle around from when I can remember. We were never owners of a piece of property, obviously. Honestly, us saying we rented, and he'd been the ag teacher there at Low-Kiva Sickles 7-8 years maybe before he'd passed away. And before that, we would have been in Mountain View, Oklahoma, and then before that, maybe in Canute, Oklahoma. There's the figures around there. Mickey Peck, he was his ag teacher, I believe. I don't think he was Dean Kepart's, but I'm real sure he was Mickey Peck's. And then maybe he went to Mountain View, and then Low-Kiva Sickles, a consolidated school there from the 50s or 60s, and then he was the ag teacher there. I was born in 74. He passed away in 1985. So I was 11, going on 12, and I can remember going with him to buy cattle in what we called the Midwest, or up north is how we would say it. And some names that are still figures of the business today, maybe not on person to person, but passed down from generation, from what we used to do. And I say we, my dad obviously was ag teacher there, and it was accustomed at the time, right. The school next door was Eakley, Oklahoma, and a gentleman by the name of Alan Kopus, which is Mark Kopus's dad. He was the ag teacher there. And both of those guys were two of the first guys, probably with a guy named Peyton Scott as well, to start traveling north and buying cattle that were ranch raised. And my dad and Alan as well, with some of the people that they knew, a name pops up to my head as Billy Rash. They would go, and my dad would, he knew the need for the cattle to be not necessarily in Oklahoma, but to send south to Texas. And we would travel and buy a group of calves and bring them home. And there wasn't such thing back then as barn help and hired hands. That was, I have an older brother named Colby. He's employed by National Beef in Kansas City. And anyway, he was just a year older than I was. And anyway, he would, it was our job to, I've got a younger brother that's Casey Horn, and he wasn't probably old enough to do many chores yet, but we all were involved. And when my dad would leave, my mom would want him to take one of us with him. And that usually was my gig, because Kobe was old enough to do more chores. And I was the one to try to keep my dad awake on the trips. We would leave Thursday after school, miss school Friday, and be rolling back in time to take a bath or a shower, and roll. Back then, everybody likes to call it a shower. Then back then, there wasn't many showers. There was mainly a bath. We'd take a bath and go to school in time, 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, with basically pickup time as the motel. So Thursday to Monday, and unless we shacked up with one of the ranchers in South Dakota or Nebraska, that's basically what would happen, as we made us a little circle in the tour and brought a 28-foot shop built at Low-Kiva Sickles ag shop, trailer full of cattle home to prepare to sell. So in a podcast earlier recorded by you guys, I talked about Bobby Maddox. One of the coolest things I'd ever seen was he come to our house to clip some calves. There wasn't a barn. We clipped them out in the open in a club calf chute. Those old blue and yellow chutes were built in Hobart, Oklahoma. I don't even remember the name of them, but anyway, a little 6-foot club calf chute. And Maddox come to clip a couple of calves for us, and then he finished, and we were going back to the ag building, and I saw him shift not a 5-speed, a 4-speed, 454, 81 or 2 model pickup without a clutch, and I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Hey,
So there you go.
Speaking of driving, I've heard a couple stories now. One about you and your dad when you were up there doing club calf shopping, and Kim getting a little tired. And how old were you?
That would have been 7 or 8, maybe 6. I'm not just 100% sure. That part's blurry, the timeline, but I can remember the shirt he had on, and I don't remember the shirt I had on, but I can remember watching him over there. And my job, my mom told me, was keep him awake. Don't let him fall asleep. And so I can remember him going to shaking his legs, and all these guys that knew him, Mark Kopus and Ron Bailey and Deron Helderman, Bobby Maddox, those type of guys that were around him back then, Tonto Cassie, Mitch Milliron, those type of guys, they would know because they spent time with him. When he'd get tired, he would go to shaking his legs, and he'd shake them 6-8 inches apart, and just shaking where you'd almost be the accelerator back then is different than it is now. If like a 55 probably seems like 95 today. And anyway, he'd go to shaking his legs. I said, hey, we're going to have to pull over. We're going to do something. And he'd go, hey, why don't I can remember this like it was yesterday. He said, why don't you crawl up here and you drive a while? He said, I can hold the gas and you drive. I'm going to take a little nap. And he said, if we get in a little jam, you wake me up and I'll hit the brake. The curves and the straightaways, and I can handle the rest. I said, yes, sir. And so that was it. Now, I can remember that like it was honestly yesterday, and I know it's been 40 years, but I can honestly remember that like it was yesterday, and thinking today how that would work. Wow. Yeah. I get nervous when my daughter leaves to go to the store. So yes, me driving my dad while he's asleep and on his knee, and 6 or 7 years old at the most, and me handling the wheel with a load of cattle in the back.
Oh my God!
That's some memories that I'll cherish and never forget. Just the good old days.
Yeah,
I can remember this, that one of the most memorable trips. There was a gentleman. I'm gonna throw some names out there that there'll be some old timers remembering, but a lot of these guys don't know this guy. But there was a guy named Dale Riesel, and that's a name that I'll always remember because he had a set of Hereford Cross cows, and we bought my first steer. Well, actually, it wasn't my first. Yeah, it was my first steer. It was my first steer. It would have been champion Hereford in 1984 at Oklahoma City, and I don't have a picture of that steer. There's one somewhere we can dig up, but I don't have one around here. But that was back in the day, and I don't know if I'm sure they don't do it anymore because it's just not part of the game. But back then, you would be a breed champion in Oklahoma City, horned Hereford or polled Hereford, and you'd get a plastic, what we call a water jug now, a 5-gallon water jug with the neck on the top that you'd buy water in, and they would stuff 1,200. I don't know why it's 1,250, but it was 1,250 for champion and 1,000 for reserve, and just stuff $1,250 $1 bills in that jug. And if you had the breed champion Hereford at Oklahoma City, you would win that. And I can remember one of our trips to South Dakota. We were looking through these calves, and my dad said, hey, there's your calf right there. And I said, do what? He said, there's your calf right there. That's the winner. And I can remember that as well, like it was yesterday. And our trip, we stayed the night with this Dale Riesel. He had a son that was close to my age, which I'm telling my age, but I'm 49 now. And that son went on to wrestle, I think, at South Dakota State. I lost track of those guys, but I do know this for a fact that Steve Gilbert from Canute, Oklahoma, he bought the cow herd before the guy sold out, never had club calves again, but he bought that cow herd. And that cow herd maybe had some line one Simmentals or line one Herefords. I don't know what they were.
Yeah.
Y'all would know more about that than me in the purebred world. But anyway, that set of Hereford cows was, I can remember going there, and I can remember freeze branding cattle for the first time, me seeing that, and at the Caffey's place as well, watching them freeze brand cattle. Les Caffey is the guy I remember. But it's been, like I said, 40 plus years ago. So there's a lot of memories I have, and a few names I remember, and a few places I remember. But I do know one of the first trips we went on was that, and that steer we'd have bought him in the early 80s, and he was
Right.
the champion Hereford steer in 1984. And my dad would have been alive at that point and there for that show. I remember going back to the stall when it was over, and he took his pocket knife and cut the plastic jug, and we got the $100 bills out. I mean, the $1 bills out of there. I thought they were hundreds. I didn't get that much money in my life.
Wow.
$150. I said, what are we going to do with all this money?
Right.
And there's a place for it, I promise you.
Right. Lots of memories just for just a few short years that you were with your dad. There just seemed like we could go on and on here of memories that just have seemed to come back about your young years with your dad. But it's unfortunate that in 1985 at what's now Oklahoma Youth Expo, used to be just Spring Livestock Show, during Heifer Week. It's unfortunate that the world lost your dad.
Yes, sir. It was that's a memory that sticks with me, and something that I won't ever forget. My brother actually had a steer. My dad had gone to South Dakota, and I do remember this guy's name, and so I won't forget. My dad bought a short horn herd for my grandfather, which was his dad, from a guy named Chuck Knoll. He had, I think we called a herd, then there was 25 or 30 cows, and AI was just kind of coming into its own and becoming something that you did to breed your cattle, artificial insemination. And my dad bought this set of cows, and then we bred them, artificially inseminated them to a bull called Dividend. And that Dividend bull, I was probably raised. I'm thinking for sure in my mind, it might be wrong, but George Alden, maybe Alden Farms had that bull, and he raised. We raised that set of calves, and I got to keep a heifer out of that group, and my older brother Colby got to keep a steer, and his steer's name was Frosty, and my heifer's name was Sugar. And my heifer, honestly, had never been beaten. We'd showed her in 84 and then into 85. She was a coming 2-year-old. And we were there to show her when my father passed away, that March 16th, 1985. She was supposed to show the morning that he passed. He picked up the wake-up call and was obviously having a heart attack. Nobody knew that till later, but at 5 o'clock that morning, he picked up the wake-up call, answered the phone, set it down, and then my mother rolled over and said, "Larry, you better get up. You've overslept," and it was too late at that point.
Right.
So
Yes, sir.
we didn't show my heifer that day. My older brother Colby had Frosty on feed. That was later the next week. And I want to tell you, men, something, and it's emotional to me, real emotional.
I can only imagine.
Several what we call big names in the business today stepped up. I can remember coming home from the show. Heck, it's rough right here, boys. I
Yes,
didn't
sir.
know I was signing up for this. Anyway, we was coming home from the show. We come home from the show, and I can remember there's a lot of people at my house. And I'll never forget Mark Kopus pulled in with a pickup and a trailer. And Colby and I were at the barn. And he said, "You boys hop that steer on that trailer. I've got this from here. I'm going to go talk to your mother." And I guess the rest is history.
Right.
Him and Bobby Maddox come in from Texas. Ron Bailey helped him. He come in from Texas. I think Steve Bonham helped some. Mitch Milliron. I can remember them. Deron Hilderman. And then Tonto Cassie was one of his good friends. He was in the Kenning days back then. Anyway, all those guys stepped up. And Mark come and got the calf and clipped him, helped finish clipping him. And there was a guy named Daryl Clem that my dad had heard was about as good a clipper as there was. And that's a name before time. And he's supposed to have been maybe one of the best there was. And Daryl Clem, me and my dad had gone to pick him up, and he was clipping on the steer while we were at the heifer show. When all this had gone down, Daryl had finished clipping the calf and went home. And then Mark showed up, got the calf. They went to the show, and the steer would end up being the grand steer at Oklahoma City the following week.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify something here real quick. That Corey and I actually talked this story a couple of days ago. I shared with him that story. Mark had told, I think, Corey and I at Oklahoma City that story. But I think we need to clarify something for those listening right now to understand something. You just name dropped Steve Bonham, Mark Kopus, Bobby Maddox. You listed three of quite possibly the biggest names in the business.
Yes,
the
sir.
problem with that name drop is this. You were 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. And I tell you that because when I first heard the story, I got chills listening to Mark tell me the story, because what I thought about right then, and I will only say this name because I was at the steer show, I thought about the fact that if I had died, that is quintessentially Baylor Bonham driving into my driveway, picking up my kids. We look at Mark and Steve and Bobby Maddox as what they are today. They weren't those guys when this happened. So it wasn't like you had the fortunate of having the greatest of greats there.
Yes,
These
sir.
guys become great since that time. I think that just needs to be noted, that you had the elites, but they weren't quite elite then. So
humble beginnings, brother.
Absolutely.
And when Mark tells that story, I've never seen that much emotion. You know, that guy there ain't big on emotions, and that guy there, he had the same emotion telling that story as you just did when you told it.
Yeah, and you know, with that being said, I can name drop some more, and it's emotional, all of it to me, but that's what drives me daily, guys. Dan Hogue was the judge. The guy that still runs OYE basically today. I'm not saying he ran it then, but hey, and he's a stand-up, a good a guy as they make. And I have zero relationship with him, but I'm just telling you, Jimmy Harrell's daughter was a senior when that Shorthorn was the grand steer of the show, and her name was Keela Harrell. Mm-hmm. Kirk Sturwalt helped them and was their what you call groomer. That's what he calls it. We call it a fitter. Sturwalt calls it a groomer still. So Kirk he helped them at that point. I'm thinking I'm right on that. I might be wrong. I might be off a year or two on that, but I'm thinking Kirk helped them. And I want y'all to know that there's something that happened that I'll never forget, that like this did not happen then. And Jimmy Harrell, and it's something that I will always honor him, and he has a high expectation, and I have a high expectation of him. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but anyway, I hold him on a pedestal. Hey, I remember he beat our shorthorn steer, my older brother's calf, beat his daughter's senior year steer. He had won the year before, and he was reserve grand that year, and I think he added on more than anybody to our steer that won the show. Man, it was many years ago. I don't remember a dollar meant a dollar back then. We needed every bit to survive. But I'm thinking in my mind, he added on $2,500, and that's something I'll never forget. We beat my older brother won the show, and that was something that I admired about that guy. That he was as happy for us as we were to win.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Well, and it was emotional, and he said it was hands down the most unique calf he'd seen. Right. That steer, to my knowledge, never got beat. My heifer never got beat.
Gotcha.
So this is not heifer never bred. There's your probably reason that boys that I don't show and sell me show heifers. Don't take any of that the wrong way. She never had a calf.
Hey, and that steer was a dividend?
He was a dividend, correct.
Right off of that same, he was a registered purebred shorthorn.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
How about it?
Yeah.
There wasn't such thing as heat seeker then, man. Yeah. You couldn't get a shorthorn without breeding one.
Right. I got you. So that's 1985. 1986. This picture here floats around the internet just a little bit of a young Brandon Horn standing in front of a backdrop, the National Western Livestock Show, with another shorthorn colored steer.
Yeah, there you go. I won't forget that memory with my dad as well. In March, I don't know. I don't remember when the time of year it was, honestly. But I can remember we were around Shawnee, maybe somewhere around there, and he was judging a county show. And my dad, a guy by the name of Bill Stanley that lived in Newcastle, of all places, home of the Steve Bonham. Anyway, before Steve Bonham was in Newcastle, this guy named Bill Stanley and my dad somehow were friends. And my dad had given him, he had a purebred Maine cow, a red and white or a cherry red. I don't remember the exact color of the cow, but I know she was red. He told Bill, well, AI that cow to Mr. Legs, a guy by the name of Billy Joe Fisher in McLeod, Oklahoma, owned that bull. And he said, I'd sure like a chance to buy the calf if you have a bull calf. I know we were judging that. I know all this because we were judging. He was judging that county show, and I rode with him. And he said, hey, we got to stop by Newcastle on the way home and look at a calf. I can remember this like it was yesterday. This calf walked around the backside of this creek feeder weighing 250, 300 pounds. And my dad said, there's your calf right there. And I said, what do you mean? He said, that's the winner. And there he was. That's him. Unfortunately, my dad passed away before he got to see me show the calf. Other than at the prospect level, we prospected him once or twice. He would have been 6 months younger than Frosty. But that calf was the Grand in 86. I guess he might have been a year younger. I said 6 months, but he'd been a year younger. That calf was the Grand at Denver in 86. I think that calf was about a May, honestly, on their age. Because I can remember us showing him in Texas, and there were some guys with some interest about buying him, and they were wondering if we would hold his teeth. They were asking Mark, because Mark Kopus helped me with the calf, asking if we would guarantee him to hold his teeth to Houston. And Mark told me, tell him we're going to guarantee him to our trailer, not their trailer.
Hey, is that the same calf in Mark's living room that has
Yes.
that picture of.
He won the belt buckle bonanza
yeah.
in 1985.
Yeah,
I
and there's
got you.
him and Copus. There's Copus
Yeah,
and,
it
and
wasn't. I got a
May.
neat story on that too. I had the super fitters of all super fitters, and you can tell there this is in the winter, and you can see how much leg hair's on that calf. So we really thought we were doing some good. But so showing him in July, you can imagine how much leg hair he had. That was right there is in January. But I'll never forget this. The three familiar names, and then the one, Mike Wilhelm, was the other one. But he was champion shorthorn at the belt buckle bonanza, and then in the grand drive, Mark told me to go take the purple oil. There wasn't no hokey pokey back then, no hocus pocus. So he said, take that purple oil. And if anybody knows what purple oil is, when you put it in one's hair, you did have to scrub them 4 or 5 times to get the oil out before you put glue back in them.
Greasy, yeah.
Yes. So he said, go wash him spot and let him lay down. We're going to refit him. I said, there's no way. He said, just do what I ask you. So, I did what he asked me, and I did. And then when it come time to fit him, I was concerned about how much time we were going to have and if it was going to work. And then looked up, and then I had Kirk Sturwalt, Bobby May, and Mark Copus and Mike Wilhelm all each had a leg, and they were fitting on my steer. And he ended up winning that show as well. He won the belt buckle bonanza in 1985. That's in July, 1st of July.
I'll be dang. 19.
Hey, we can't leave one thing out.
Okay.
My bride just informed me, and I did know this, but it's not that much of a memory to me because I don't remember. But my wife had the champion Brangus at the same show the same day, and we never met.
At the National Western.
No, at the belt buckle
belt
bonanza.
At the belt buckle.
Yes.
Oh.
How about that?
Right.
So
that's
she told
very
me
interesting. It took you that long to find her?
it did. Hey, she told me that, and I didn't call her bluff, but I did go back and try to find some magazine articles to see if she wasn't kind of fibbing just a little, and I found it, and she did have the champion Brangus at the show.
I got you. Kick along here. Let's go 1990. You did the old 1-2 punch in the state of Oklahoma. 1990, you win Oklahoma City with a limousine steer from Ron Bailey.
Hey, plug for Stuman Limousine Ranch. Anyway, that year the purebred Stuman Limousines was champion at San Antonio, Houston, and Oklahoma City. Harlan Ritchie would have judged right there. He's not in that picture, but hey, y'all looky there. Bob Funk, he hadn't changed his look any since 1990.
Yeah.
That's
Same
Bob Funk
hat.
in the middle, y'all.
That's right. Yeah.
Same hat, new woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's Ron Bailey on clear.
that's
on the
RB
right,
on the right.
Yeah, on the
Yeah.
I want everybody to know that my dad was Ron Bailey's ag teacher, and Ron Bailey was actually where I live now. Ron Bailey was living in Abilene, Texas, and I think he missed home. And when my dad passed away, he moved back home, and he and Steve is who helped me continue to show calves. My older brother wanted to be a baseball player, and I wanted to show calves, and Ron and Steve made it happen for me. So
Also, the
I'll put
background
that
is
for those
Richie
guys
Oak.
anytime.
Yep.
Those guys have a good heart, and they're good men, and I'll go to bat for them at any time.
Absolutely. Standing in that picture also next to Funk, that's, I think, Richie Oakes.
No, that's not Richie. I can tell you who that is, but I lost track of his name.
Oh, it looked like Richie Oakes from here.
No, it's not Richie. It's a gentleman that ended up being, I think he was a state representative around Lawton there.
Okay,
We'd have to
maybe
get Hoopy
not.
online and tell us who that
Yeah,
is. But
probably. Yeah, I'm not sure who that. Boy, it looks like Richie Oakes, and then Dave Stoltz.
yep,
Oh, that is?
that's Dave Stoltz.
How about
He
that?
looks like he's 14.
Golly. Boy,
Yeah,
he does. Yeah.
I'll be dang. See, and then
Well,
that same year, that very same year, you win Tulsa.
Yes, sir. Um,
Black Baldy.
yes, sir. That
Yeah.
was, I don't have a picture of that thing here. I don't know if y'all have one, but I don't have one. But that was kind of a really neat story and a really neat time in my life. Um, we grew up in baseball country, played a lot of baseball. I had an opportunity to play for a state title. The same time I have the very best that's changed nowadays, the very best baseball coach there was. And he was a great man, and he was an ag man. Him and Ron Bailey actually played against each other from Eakley to Low-Kiba Sickles. And anyway, Stan Bixler would have raised the calf, the Black Baldy, got him from Steve and Ron. He was a Kennebec. And Kennebec would have been a Maine bull from
yeah.
the Youngs.
Yeah.
So this steer, those guys, and they still do, they, every time Steve bottom bids on a calf, everybody thinks he's going to win. So with that being said, those guys had the eye to go and pick the ones and put on feed and very humble beginning. We're talking about this, but man, blessed to have those guys in my life. No two ways about it. There's no two ways about it. Well, that steer wasn't a popular one. They thought he would feed good. He had a neat color. Guy by the name of Gerald Callahan judged Tulsa, and the steer won the show. But before time to go to the show, in the fall in Oklahoma, where we're from, there in the small schools, you play for a state title in baseball in Class B and Class A in the fall instead of football if you didn't have football. Well, I wasn't a very good pitcher, but I could throw strikes. And we had a pretty good defense, so we had two studs that could throw the ball in the middle to upper 80s and could get people out. And my coach, I told him there's a chance that I might not be there on Thursday at the state baseball tournament. He said, "What do you mean there's a chance? You either are or you're not." And I said, "Man, our steer looks good." And Ron said if he looks real good after we finish clipping him, that I will be showing at Tulsa. And, that's our plan. We wasn't planning on being in the state tournament, and we wasn't planning on winning Tulsa. But these things have come up, and this is what we've presented with. And pretty neat story, and I'll make this quick, but the baseball, my coach still makes a living in ag today, and he said, hey, take your glove, play catch in the parking lot with somebody you know. Keep your arm loose. He said, you're supposed to pitch the first game. I think we can out-hit them and get them out. We were going to have to do that if you pitched anyway. But he said, show your calf, sell your calf, be back for the game Friday. I said, yes, sir. End up on a Thursday, the steer was the grand steer at the Tulsa State Fair. We won the baseball game. My coach, in an interview for the newspaper, said I was known as Little Horn because my brother was a year older than me and a stud in baseball. He says Little Horn was supposed to pitch today, but we got by without him. I understand he just had the grand steer at the Tulsa State Fair. It looks to me like he made the right decision. So how many baseball coaches do y'all know would say something like that in a newspaper article? Anyway, long story short, I had some friends by Chad Chaplin and the other guys. They watched my calf. I sold him on Friday morning, got back for the game to play Friday night. Played against the minor twins from Hammond that played in the MLB, both of them, and the NBA on Ryan. And then in the state championship game, we played Asher. They were the winningest program in the state of Oklahoma, and we beat them in the state finals. And I got back in my vehicle, my pickup, and drove back to Tulsa to put the steer back in the old days, I don't know if they still do it or not, but in the old days, what they would do is you sold your calf on Friday and you'd stick around till Sunday and Sunday evening or Saturday evening. You had to lead your steer to the truck, put him on the truck after you had him on display the whole time. And I drove back after the game Saturday and put my steer on the truck, then come home. So it was quite a memorable week for me. We won a state baseball tournament and had the grand steer at Tulsa State Fair. And couldn't have accomplished any of it without all the help of all the people that were involved. And like I said, Ron and Steve, they were sure an asset to the program. And the reason Mark wasn't is he'd already moved on to Texas and he was working for Dr. Wise.
Yep, gotcha. So after high school time for you, short stint at baseball.
Yes, sir.
And then we end up working for the Bradshaw family 93, 92, 93, 97 range.
Yes, sir.
Did you feel like in that time with the Bradshaws, were you cutting your teeth? Were you finding your way? Talk to us about where that time. I mean, you had a lot of success. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The success you and your family had, you had success, but once you were kind of the guy in the driver's seat on someone else's checkbook, did you talk about that?
I will, and I'll start out by saying it's basically the same way I roll today. It is nothing was planned. I played baseball for a few months. I cut my hand and couldn't play anymore. And Steve Bonham said, "Hey, look, I got a few families I sold some calves to that's when driving distance to El Reno on a daily basis. You can help some of these folks." And I had me a pretty neat gig that, looking back, the good Lord, without a doubt, has made it very easy for me because I'm not very smart. And he would say, Steve said, "Hey, look, it's real simple. These guys need your help. You need some money. Go see them. Do what needs to be done. I'm not saying you've got to rinse and blow them, do those things, but you'll figure it out. Just go help. These are good people. I'm going to help you. You'll figure it out." So I got to give y'all my routine after baseball was over and I cut my hand. And I got to give y'all my routine, my weekly routine at Redlands Community College. And it was one day at one family's house for $100 a day cash. Next day, class till noon, same gig. One at Kingfisher, one at Okarche, one here, one there. So 4 days a week, I made $400 cash. And I'm going to tell y'all, I was the wealthiest guy in college and the wealthiest guy in El Reno. And I bought everybody's lunch every day. And I swore there would never be another poor day. And those are the memories that I won't ever forget of the guys that J. Paul Fagan, Brett DeVelvis, those guys, that was the good times. So right. Steve calls and said, "Hey, I sold some calves." He said, "What are you doing this summer?" I said, "I don't know. I'll probably go drive the tractor for Ron and farm." He said, "Hey, I sold some calves to a family in Corpus Christi. They need some summer help." This was Friday, 4 or 5 o'clock. Man, there's no cell phones. Okay. So he's like, "Hey, come to the barn tomorrow, bring you some clothes. You'll ride back with this guy that bought some calves from Corpus Christi with his hired man. And they'll fly you home Sunday." So that was Thursday or Friday evening. I rode back and asked him a million questions. This guy that I never saw him again after the road. He was a tractor driver for one of the farmers around there, and they paid him to come get the calves, 2 different families. Steve said, "Whatever you do when you get there, you unload those calves and you crawl up in that trailer and halt them. You lead them out of there and you tell them how good they all are. I said, I got it. I got that part. Don't worry about that. So I flew. I remember flying up. We went down to the water. I'd never seen stuff like that. We went down to the water, Oceanfront Drive. We ate at Clifton Bradshaw and his family. We ate at Water Street Seafood Company. And it just dawned on me. I thought, hey, I might need to call my mom and let her know where I'm at. So I went to the payphone. I called my mom and I say, Mom, hey, I'm in Corpus. I'm looking at a little summer job I'm going to take. She said, do what? I said, looking at a summer job I'm going to take, and I just want to tell you, in case she's wondering where I'm at, I'm not in El Reno. My vehicle's there, but I'm not. I'm flying back. Need somebody to pick me up at the airport at Oklahoma City Sunday night. So before we left there, I'd made a deal with him to work through the summer, and I didn't leave for 7 years. So I flew home, got my stuff, finished college. That was kind of somewhere right in there around spring break time. And then in May when school was out, I remember the day school was out, I loaded my stuff up in the back of my half-ton pickup. And I got to tell this quick part of the story that's going to make everybody smile. I am definitely not a pool shark, and I'm definitely not a gambler. All right, there's this kid that thought he was pretty good shooting some pool. And I said, hey, he had a bed cover for my half-ton pickup. He took it off his pickup. I said, I'm going to shoot you for a game of pool. $100 you get. If you win, you don't win, I get the bed cover. He said, deal. I beat him in a game of pool, had all my stuff loaded up the day I left, shoved underneath that because it rained. I got to looking at the weather. It was going to rain on the way to Corpus Christi, running down I-35. So I had everything stuffed in my pickup, and I had a bed cover for my pickup, and I beat him on the game. The good Lord was definitely with me because I don't know if I've ever won a game of pool in my life, especially when I gambled. And I did smoke him, and I did get the bed cover, and I'll never forget that as long as I live. And I headed off to Corpus Christi, and I never looked back. And I have not been an Okie ever since that day.
All right. Went for a summer job, stayed 7 years.
Hey,
That's a double C.
I'm sure you don't remember this, Brandon, but I never even told Brett this. The first time I met you, you were working for Bradshaw's, and I was at the Houston Livestock Show. I'd been in Texas 4 months, maybe, helping Mark Kopus, clipping fallborns and Fort Worth ones and stuff, and we went down there to watch the show, and we were in the motel bar, that big motel everybody stayed at, and you were in there, and mind you, I had maybe crossed the Kansas-Nebraska line twice before I moved down there and helped Mark that spring. And so I had not been around a lot of eccentric people because Nebraskans were kind of low-key. And I just remember meeting you, and you operate with energy now. You operate with a lot of energy then. And
Yeah,
I remember
that was good old days.
I remember getting back to the motel room and asking Dan Young, I said, hey, that horn, that's something. he said he's been like that since I've ever known him.
There you go. The good times.
Oh boy.
I'll be dang. All right, so Bradshaw, your time at Bradshaw, tell us. I mean, stepping stones. What was it there that got you to the next event? I mean,
Before we get any further,
you've said it twice. Nothing about you've ever planned anything.
no, exactly.
But
I'll never forget this. I thought I was always right on everything, and I always tried to have a pretty good plan going into what we were going to try to accomplish. But I'll never forget. Clifton Bradshaw told me one time. He said, "I want to tell you something right now before we get any further." I said, "Go ahead." And this is about a year and a half or 2 years into that. And I said, "No, that's not going to work. That camp's not good enough. This. No. He said, let me tell you something right now. He said, you think you're right every time. And he said, I expect you to. That's what I pay you for. But he said, one of these days, you're going to look back and you're going to thank me but you're really going to thank my checkbook for all the lessons you learned on my dollar. And that's something that I've never, ever forgot. And he is so right
Yeah.
about, like, I thought I was right and I didn't have a clue. And,
You know,
and he
that's
said,
the,
hey,
that's the truth.
he said, be glad that I got enough money to make this happen for you,
Yeah.
because you learn a lot of lessons on my checkbook.
Yeah. I think Corey and I can both relate in our
yeah.
times growing up. That's very relatable there. So, you know, and I think
So we showed there, and he had a set of cows. I helped that family, and in debt to him for life. Learned a lot from him. As we were phasing out there, another twist of all this that got me to the point of me wanting to do what I do today. As we were phasing out of that, toward the end of that, their show career and their cows, and living in South Texas, I met some farmers that he dealt with daily and stuff, and they didn't want to. They wanted to shoot few show pigs. I made a California run with Jay McCormick and Brandon Anderson, and Jay McCormick. We were sitting in a motel room in California, and he goes, "You need to go by and see Rory D." I said, "Who's Rory D?" And he goes, "Rory Delm, you don't know him?" And I said, "Never heard of him." He said, "We're going to call him right now." In a motel room in California, we call Rory Delm. I flew out of San Antonio. Rory D lives 30 minutes from the airport in San Antonio. When I flew back into San Antonio, I drove from the airport to Rory D's house, and we've been best friends ever since, from the first 5 minutes I met him.
Wow. So we visited with a few guys to try to get some insider trading on you and your time at Roy D's, and there was a story about you. It said that when Rory hired you, there was 3 things about it that he loved about you. Number 1, you were uncontrollable. Number 2, you were eccentric. And he said you could sell them higher and better than nobody had ever done before. They was bragging on you.
Well,
And but there was a story that stuck out in this guy's mind about you. He said that you kind of got pretty big for your drawers, and you were in Duncan, Oklahoma, and there was a Chester White. And do you want to tell the story?
oh, I can, yeah. Rory Delm Show Pigs. He's a legend. Anyway, he always had his way of keeping me grounded. I remember for a fact that Gary Cramblett was standing there right there, and he could not keep himself contained. He was laughing so hard. So, and might have got into the alcohol a little too much the night before, and I wasn't thinking clearly, obviously. But I told Rory, I said, "Hey, there's a Chester White boar over here that I think is one good son of a gun." I said, "I think this thing is incredible." I said, we need to own him. He said, "We don't have any Chester White sows. What are we going to do with the boar?" I said, "I don't know, but this thing's the ticket, I think. I think he's got all the right neat pieces." I said, he probably don't have enough butt or enough muscle, but the rest of him is perfect. He said, "Boy, did you bump your head?" He said, "I can tell you one thing for sure. We get that Chester boar. We won't need these diesel pickups and aluminum trailers. We can survive with Toyota pickups and homemade ag shop steel built pig coop, because that's how we're going to be able to sell them. We won't make a living, period, selling show pigs if we got a Chester White boar with no boo-boo. It won't happen."
He said, "Boy, did you
go over there and get studying your lesson."
Yeah.
He said, "Let me tell
Did
you
bump
something.
your head?"
The best thing," he said, "there's 2 things. Did you bump your head?" And the next thing he said was, "That muscle on the hind quarter and ham of a show pig It's like an American Express. You better not leave home without it if you plan on winning something or if you plan on selling something very good.
Yeah.
And
Well, that was the next story that they felt like your time at Rory's there is probably what propelled you today to build these show steers, to build these sire battery you have today, was based upon a simple principle that Rory had, that never leave the salt block out. You have got
correct.
to always bring the muscle.
It's not very hard.
Yeah.
He said, it's real simple, honestly. Most of these intelligent, overpaid people, is how he put it, makes it too hard. He said, build them like a box, basically a rectangle. And he said, make them as stout as you can make them and make them travel. And don't make them too big. And he said, and you will survive. It's that simple.
Yep.
And he said, don't make it harder than what it is. When people get in a jam, that's when they do. They make it harder than what it is.
Gotcha. Yep. So
now, when did where did you meet Breck along the line, Brandon?
Right there about that time. I
that time.
met Rory and Breck about the same time. 97 is when I met Breck.
Okay.
That Bradshaw's last year in Fort Worth. And she was there, was a female sponsor counselor for where she was teaching school, and the ag teacher knew that her dad was an ag teacher at Hereford and said, hey, we've got several girls going. You can be a sponsor and you can drive a van. And I was actually checked in my motel and met her. And then Jay McCormick basically reintroduced us that following afternoon, and we hit it off, and realized we kind of grew up with each other, but didn't really remember each other, and kind of pretty much the rest is history.
there was
I say that. So y'all know the timelines and all that. I met Breck, and then I was phasing out my time at Bradshaw's in South Texas. We got married. She coached for a year down there and come to me, you guys, and said her younger sister was playing college volleyball here at Abilene Christian University and going to be a senior. The job came open, and my wife approached me with that, and she said, hey, the Abilene Christian University volleyball coaching job's open. Do you mind if I apply? What do you think about me applying? I said, I'm cool with that. She said, well, if I get the job, we do got to move to Abilene, obviously. And I said, I'm good with that too, but there's no way you're going to get the job. You're 23, 24 years old. That's not going to happen. So I kind of shot her down with, you won't get the job, and we're going to figure something else out instead of that gig. But hey, here we are.
You told me when I was there, I came to visit you last November, and FYI, those of you listening to us talk about it, if you've never been, the best time you'll ever have is if you go down there and just drive through. My boys and I went. We enjoyed our time there. But you shared with us at lunch one day that you had delivered pigs in that area. You had been shopping about. You had kind of been looking for a place, because at the time y'all lived in town, you was kind of looking for a place. We'll get to that in just a second, because we're fixing to wind down part one of the Horn Livestock story. And we are now to the point that you and your family have moved to Abilene.
Yes,
it is
sir.
Just the two of you. You are in transition mode here. But part one, Corey, I don't know about you, but part one was so informative, just from the people along the way that had helped you. I guess for me, it was about the guys that helped you along the way before they were who we know them as today. Would you? Is that right, Corey?
You bet. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
and just the and especially the youth of all them people that were your mentors, that ended up being some of the most influential people in the business.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And the whole deal here is humble beginnings, and you can already read into that just how just how Brandon has been to this point of how he's got to this point. But now, as we start to go into what is known as part two with Horn Livestock, we're going to catch you up just a little bit to speed here. If you didn't have a chance to watch part one, you need to go back, stop right now, go back and watch part one. We thank you for gathering up here with us for part two with Brandon, Corey, and myself here on Cattle Drive Live. But Brandon, we're going to catch up right now. We're going to kick in gear here at the Abilene story. Tell the story you told me at lunch, over lunch one day, about how unique it was you ended up with this place that is now known as Horn Livestock. Talk about how you landed right there where you're at.
Well, when I didn't own any cows. I back up on that. I with Rory, he's anybody that knows Rory Delm can tell you that uh, the very best thing about him is his ability to manage and accomplish things. And um, you know, he had taught me, no bad debt, no this, no that. And hey, Rory still has a nickel of the first dime that he made when he was 8 years old, I'll promise you. And he's a self-made millionaire selling show pigs. And I say that loosely, but that's a fact. Um, and and solely selling show pigs. So he is like, hey boy, and everything was always boy. If you want some cows, hey, you're making the kind of money you need to be buying some. And I know we're doing these things, and you can find a place to run them and do it. This is what you need to be doing, because you're not always going to be here, and you're going to have a family, and you're going to do this, that, and so he kind of gave me a little light vision of what I had in mind, and made it look feasible for me to be able to accomplish. So, with that being said, as I was, Jagger was being born in that time, and in '01 there, and so we were 3 or 4 years into her coaching and us moving and living here, and I was half the time at Rory's, or 2/3 of the time at Rory's, and a third of the time of being a dad and a husband, and just trying to make it all work, and establish as much of a relationship as I could with my wife and my son, and still try to make a living and make this all go. And as I was out and about getting to look and do these things, I would stumble across a cow that I would like, or a female, a heifer. I spent a lot of times at Kent McLemore's. That guy's one of the sharpest livestock people there are. There's no doubt in my mind. I've learned as much from him as I have from anybody. That guy can see and do things. He's a winner, period. Let's just leave it at that. He's a winner. Kent, just how he did stuff, and the work ethic he had on making a bear be a winner, as the time he would spend with the ones that were good. And I watched those things, and watched his kids that now, I guess his granddaughter had the grand steer to OYE this year. So I watched when the Yoakum girl's mother showed her steer. You was talking about Dan Young, when he fit and clipped her calf, and when she had her first grand champion there at OYE, when Dan helped them, and watching them do that. So with all that being said, I was spending time with show pigs and buying females, and a guy by the name of Pete White in Oklahoma, he would run them for me. And Pete White's been instrumental in my program that people don't really realize. I was no different than Clint Petzold with Show Circuit. Hey, I'm Clint's guy. I'm Pete White's guy. Those are my guys. I've been loyal to them. They've been loyal to me. Honestly, guys, talking about humble beginnings, Pete White has raised cattle for me every single year since 2002 is when I took my very first cow over. I knew who Pete White was. Actually, Pete White raised my wife's Breck breed champion Angus steer in Houston in 1992. So I've known Pete my whole life, and when Bruce Glover has been instrumental in my life, he brought me to the table on the kind of cattle that I needed to raise and pick and see and do. So Bruce said, "Hey, Pete can run some cows for you. He's flushing some cows and doing some things." So I carried some cows over to him, and hey, before you knew it, I had Pete 100 cows, guys.
No kidding.
And Pete told me, "Hey, look, you live in Abilene now."
Right.
Pete White, hey, I've told a few people this story, and this is something that needs to be stated. It's real simple. Pete running for me for 2 to 3 years, and I can remember the fee was $2 a day. He run the cows, and he preg checked bred, AI bred, creek feed the calves and wean the calves, and just made it all happen for $2 a day. And I was like, well, I don't need to own a place. He's doing that. Pete calls me one day and he says, "Hey, look, that's real simple. You've got 120 cows here. If this is what you want to do," he said, "you need your own place." And he said, "You're not learning anything of the best part of the business. And this will be the best thing for you if you're doing what I'm doing. And then you'll learn how these things need to be built and how they need to look and how they need to perform."
Yep.
And I thought he was kind of picking on me at first, and then he made it real simple. This is the most educational thing anybody's ever done for me to that point in my life. And I said, "Well, there's no way I can make that work." And Pete's like me. He's not educated except from doing what he does daily. And Pete said, "It's real simple. These cattle you have here, there's a lot of good ones, but there's probably more of them that aren't good enough." And he said, "And you're the type of person that you know every single one that you've bought, and you've got every single one of them in your mind." He said, "I don't have to take an inventory. You know which ones they are." He said, "Get you a yellow steno notebook. Draw you a line right down the middle with a pencil or an ink pen, either one you want to use." He said, "I'm going to make this real simple for you. You need to find you a place in Abilene, and you need to move the cows that can pay their way to Abilene. The ones that can't, it doesn't matter what you paid for them. They're paid for. Thanks to Rory D and you and him teaching how to do business." He said, "The ones that pay their way needs to go to Abilene. The ones that don't need to go to the Apache sale barn." It's that simple. And that was very humbling for me at the time. He said, "It's real simple. I'm going to tell you how to do this, and you don't need to make it any harder than what I'm going to tell you." He said, "Draw a line right down the middle of that notebook." He said, "Everyone that pays their way, put them on the left side. The one that can't pay their way or hasn't not paid their way, put them on the right side. Let me haul those off for you, and you got you a down payment on your place." He said, "You take the ones on the left side, you put them on your place. You buy your place, you put them on your place." He said, "Your cattle are paid for. The ones that pay their way will make your payment on your place." He said, "The years where you do extra good and you have bulls, buy you creek feeders, buy you a new trailer, buy you the things that you're going to use, a new squeeze chute, a squeeze chute, period, fencing supplies. Do those things. Don't make it harder than what it is. Don't spend what you don't have. If you'll do those things, I promise you, you'll be successful." He said, "With the main thing, do not haul these ones that can't pay their way to Texas. It's that simple. I don't care what you give for them. If they bring 600 today at the sale barn, you've made 600. You haven't lost 7,400.
Right.
You've made 600. So
that's a good point you bring up there, because Corey, in Corey's time at the places he's been at, the bull stud places I've been, we talk about this all the time, and not just the three of us in this conversation, but I think industry wide, people that are real with things on about any program. I don't care if you run 30 cows or you run 350 cows. Most places are ran by a very core group of cows that would fit on one hand. And
Correct.
we get to be collectors on that other side of the paper because she is this and she come from that. But in Pete White's, it don't matter where she come from, old son. Get rid of that thing. She's not paying her way. That's some very valuable knowledge.
If they can't pay their way, you don't need them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I honestly use that when I'm to the point where we've got too many. The emotional attachment, Chappie talks about emotional. That thing makes me emotional. Obviously, on a lot of things we do, and it's good to have emotion with all that. And it's no different when you go buy anything, a vehicle, a cow, or whatever. When emotions get involved, you got to sometimes take a step back, have a little light reality check. Is this something I really need to do? Or is this something that's going to be a good decision for what we're doing? And hey, Pete made it real. And I've never forgot that lesson that he taught me that day. And he has no idea that I remember that. And that's how I still make decisions and live by the same principle to this day. He has no idea, I promise you. But Pete White started raising cattle for me, embryo transplant calves. He started raising cattle for me before 2000, but in 2002, we flushed the first set of cows. We raised the first set of calves in 2004, and that was the first set of embryo transplant calves he raised for me. He's been putting in embryos for me since 2004, every consecutive year since then, and he's still my man.
Right. There's such a fine line, and to run a successful operation, you got to be right on that line to where you're proud of the product you're kicking out, but yet you are so judgmental of and don't get barn blind and get caught up in your own hype that you create that product that has success on a high level.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you this. I didn't have the confidence to do it, and I didn't have the money to do it. And when we would flush cows, let's say we get 12 embryos, I'd tell Pete to transfer 4. Hey, fellas, Pete transferred 12. Right. And I said, Pete, hey, look, man, I'm not sure I can pay that bill. He said, you can sell stuff better than anybody I know, and they're not very good. He said, they aren't very good. I do know that. They're not very good. And if you can sell that, hey, I'm going to keep putting them in. I want to tell you something. He said, I will tell you something for sure. They will not make you $1 in that jug.
Right.
And I've never forgot that. And Pete's always been my best guy. Pete's secretary / woman that runs the show, Lacey Merritt, she texted me yesterday or called me and said, hey, we're going to have a few extra cows. You know Pete's motto, do you want them? I said, I'll take all you got. So as we're rolling the end of this week, putting in embryos, you want any extras? I said, they won't make any money in the jug. I want all I can get. So, anyway, so we have a few extra heats. Do you want them? You get first chance. I said, I want them all.
Yeah.
So anyway, Pete's convinced me that I can sell some of them, and some of them do actually work sometimes.
Right. So your time at Rory's, the show pig world, I think translated just a little bit to the show steer world for you, because those guys in the pig world, in terms of Brett Carter's viewpoint, those guys are really good about making parts. This part for this part for this, and it's like, why in the hell are you doing that? It's because I need this over here. Did any of that translate for you? And when Pete kicked you out of Sterling and said, do this yourself, did that mode kick in for you?
All of it, without a doubt. All of it, without a doubt. No doubt. I love the show pig business, and I love the camaraderie of it and the guys in it, and made lifelong friends that I cherish and never forget. The memories and the things that we've tried to accomplish, and some of it we did accomplish. But with that being said, the I like the show pig industry because of how fast it moves. And, you know, you folks that know me, that's kind of my gear.
Oh yeah.
Preston Graves calls it the big hole. You know, slam that thing up there against the dash and let's get it in the big hole. So I like to roll right there. And so the thing that gets me now is, you know, a guy's got to humble himself and slow it down just a little bit to make sure you're on the right track. And, you know, it becomes more about relationships daily now than it does livestock, honestly. As a whole, I've come that far in that part of my life that's it is. We have to make a living still, but that's what it's about.
2002, 2004, we've talked about. Let's click up here to about 2008. You ended up raising a steer that wins Houston Livestock Show that has a real cool story that we found out right before we started this whole deal. This story actually starts back in, if my notes are right, September of 2006.
Yeah, that steer right there was born 2006.
That's exactly right, in the fall, but this was in September. What forward thinking did Brandon Horn have?
You know, I've never tried to be anybody but me, and I've always tried to take. I learn so much from people, and I forget this thing. And if I can say this, if you don't get anything else out of this podcast interview, whatever you want to call this, I'm not very tech savvy, but hey, there's always people watching and there's always people paying attention to what you're doing. And I don't care who you are. You've got a chance to inspire somebody daily every time you speak and every time you work and every time you do things. You don't even have to speak and people are watching and seeing what you're doing. So with that being said, what you're looking at there right here in this picture, there was something spoken from a man named Phil Lautner that said something to me one time that stuck in my head. And I've known Phil Lautner, you know, we go back to this episode 1, we talk about my dad. And I can remember after my dad had passed away that we gathered up. My dad had, he called a black telephone book. We gathered up a black telephone book and we looked up people's names. And my older brother and I decided we was going to go up north and do what he did. And we was going to gather us up some trading stock. We was going to make us a little money and see if I couldn't get a show calf out of the deal as well. This is before Ron and Steve started helping me. Okay, so Ron Bailey and Steve Bonham. So we stopped at Phil Lautner's house. So I had a relationship with him. We bought a calf from Phil, stayed the night with him. Colby Horn and I, we took off in our own pickup and trailer. Colby Horn was 16 years old and I was 15. And we were going up north to buy us a show calf or 2 or 6 or 8 or 10. We had us a little checkbook, had $12,000 or $15,000 that we had borrowed from the bank. We were going to trade us some calves. We were going to do how our dad did it. So I didn't talk about that until it just come back to my memory here. Well, so I can remember staying the night at Phil Lautner's house and buying a calf from him. And then going to Kurt Rocker's house and staying the night with him and selling him the calf we bought from Phil Lautner. So, and I'm sure the guys was just trying to help us. I'm sure the cattle were just average cattle, but they were just trying to help us because we were just trying to make it. We was just trying to make $1. So all that being said, so I kept a relationship with Phil Lautner over the years. And remember where we lived in Oklahoma, he had come, and the first I knew of him before we went to his house was he leased a bull called Grand Slam to my neighbor in Oklahoma, a guy named Terry Lyerly. And he leased this bull to him. He had 2 bulls. And that was kind of his start and his gig. That was before Who Made Who, a bull called Grand Slam. This Grand Slam bull, I think, put him on the map. He would lease bulls to people. So I had a relationship with him. Who Made Who Days was in. I sold semen for Phil Lautner. I made a little side money doing that. Boom. He tells me one day, stuck in my mind. He said, heat wave time. He said, hey, don't ever try to flush a cow to raise another bull or an animal as good as the one you're seeing. It's cheaper and more consistent to clone them. So I'm Rory D, man, every day of the week, except maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. This Warren Dozer, I met him when I moved to Abilene. I had a set of heifers. Sold him half of this heifer when she was open one day when he preg checked her, and he said, hey, I've been learning how to flush a few cows. Why don't I flush this open heifer? And I said, I like the way that sounds. He said, what do you want for this heifer? I said, take $1,000 for half of her. And he reached in his pocket and he got me $1,000 cash, and we were partners. That's him standing in that picture. Okay. And
Wow.
I'll never forget, I'm at Rory's early in the week. He says, hey, when you come home, you need to come out here. We got a calf that don't look like many of them I've ever seen. I said, okay. He said, like none of them I've seen. I said, all right. So I was driving through some hay grazer, head tall, and stumbled upon this calf on a four-wheeler when I got home. It was like seeing the light. It was very emotional, and I was like, I'd like to take him home and make sure he's still alive tomorrow and put him in my living room or my bedroom or bathroom or somewhere. So I checked on him quite frequently. That was the animal we're looking at right there. And I remembered something, and I approached Dr. Dozer about it. I said, hey, look, what do you think about cloning this thing and then selling him as a steer? He said, well, I never thought about anything like that, so I'm on board on whatever you think we can make work. I said, I'm going to check on it, but I'd like to clone him. And then cut it, castrate him, sell him as a steer. We can use that money to pay for the cloning. He goes, I like the way you think. So
you didn't have the money to clone him. You were already betting to come.
That's exactly right. 30 days old. I'd planned on selling him off of his mother. He had a flush mate brother that was similar to him, but not the same animal. That steer you're looking at right there brought $33,000. And he ended up winning Houston. We ordered 3 clones and got one. They called them copies. We got one copy born alive. And the year in March of 2008, when that steer was born, when that steer was grand champion steer at Houston, we had a clone, which we call Solid Gold, that was 1 month old at the time. He was born in February. To fulfill the contract from Vivance at the time, which is now Transova, they had to produce 2 more clones. I ordered one, Dr. Dozer ordered one, and we brought in a partner, a silent partner, had a few cows that was going to help pay for the whole deal to let him have one as a cleanup bull, and we could still collect him and sell semen. Okay. So all that being said, we rolled with that plan. They had to put some extra embryos to fulfill our contract, and we got 2 extra, a total of 4. You know, at the time there wasn't as much going on as there is now. I don't know how much goes on now either, but until recently, we'd never cloned another animal. Wade Rogers and I have cloned Dingo We Trust, and there is a clone on him that we do sell semen on now that we sell at a cheaper rate than Dingo We Trust. But with all that being said, this bull was the one that started it for us. I can tell you this, in 2000, the first ones available to be born were born in the fall of 2010. That makes them show in the spring of 2012 like this. So the oldest ones alive could show in 2012. The Grand Steer at San Angelo in 2012 was a solid gold. The Grand Steer at San Antonio in 2012 was a solid gold. The Grand Steer at Houston and the Reserve Grand Steer at Houston in 2012 were solid golds. And then it took off from there for us.
Right.
But
your intentions when you made the so-called copy was to steer the copy to selling. What was it about?
No.
Was it to Houston?
No, the Houston Steer. I thought I'd never seen one look like this. This was the most unique looking animal I'd ever seen. He was small, chubby, boxy, and had bigger bone, and just it's no different. It's no different than when both of you guys saw your wife. You knew what you.
Right.
How does that thing compare? Just in that picture right there, that's 13 years ago. How does he compare to cattle nowadays? Do you think
They're not much different? We've made them a little better in areas, but
yeah,
they're still the old Rory D model.
Boy, he
Built-
just looks to me like he'd compete nowadays.
He would just build them on like a salt block, boys.
Yeah. So that's where I missed what you said. Cut this one, clone him to make a bull.
That's correct.
Okay, I missed it the other way, and so
The steer brought $33,000. Steve Bonham bought him. He sold him. He wins Houston. We use the $33,000 to clone the three. It costs $37,500 to clone 3 head. Wow. We end up getting 2 extras. Had a total of 5. And the first one we made, they were all clones of the steer. The first one we made that was born solo, he passed away a little past 14 months of age.
Right.
And so then the myth was out that clones don't live very long, it won't work, and this and that. If I had it to do over, I didn't get them named correctly. I named him Gold. I should have named him Solid Gold 1, knowing there was going to be more to come. Because what got people fouled up was they call this the original Solid Gold. Well, the original was the steer, the bull himself. And you might have, if you got a picture of that bull, put that thing up. That bull, he kind of set himself apart, but we had then the steer. The steer, I think he won Grand Reserve every time he showed, but he was pretty unique and pretty special. Still to this day, I think the solid gold females are probably as nice a ones as we have or we can make.
Right. So while we're digging this picture up here, talk to us about Solid Gold and where he went. Obviously, mad success out of the gate, and that's probably for me, it was some of the very first colored cattle that we started to see. And I know the slick deal went that way, but not to get off subject of that. Talk about Solid Gold, where you took the genetics of Solid Gold to get to.
Well, back to the cloning process, and I wanted to make me a bull. That bull looked like on the kind of females that I had tried to put together and tried to start making, with his color. I was like, hey, this is what I want him to look like. I'll breed this cow. My cows are TH clean. That TH was becoming popular. I shouldn't say popular. It was becoming known what the genetic defect was.
Right.
Winners usually are TH carriers, but not TH infected. Because there wasn't enough double carriers, bull and cow, out there. So with that being said, females that were available to breed to and that I'd produced were all clean on clean genetics. And he was a TH carrier, guys. It was just like throwing gas on a fire. I mean, it took off. It made me look smart, and I'm not that smart. It worked. I mean, he had such a unique look, and he was powerful, and he was moderate. The thing was just a special animal.
Right.
He was probably one of the first bulls that transitioned out of the South and kind of got up into our country in the North
Correct.
that I can remember.
Yes, sir. And he would have been a heat wave on a predominantly
Yeah.
Charolais, high percentage Charolais cross cow.
Yeah.
Right. The cow that you guys called 10.
Charolais 10, correct.
Yeah, Charlotte 10. That's what Chad Chaplin and I visited just a real quick tonight about some of this. And he said, contrary to popular belief, there's not but 2 famous cows at Horn Livestock. Which was a mouthful there. And I said, where are you going with this? And he said, no, instrumental. There's more than that. But he said it all started with 10 and 419. And
Correct.
he said those 2 are the basis of what that guy enjoys today. And so, if not to jump away from 10 and solid gold, but where does 419 start to fire up for Horn Livestock?
Yeah. I'd bought her from Kevin Newman, and I can remember her standing there, and she had such a unique look, and she don't have any famous bulls in her pedigree. He told me she was bull bred, Charolais Maine Shorthorn, and I said, sounds good to me. So she just had a unique build. She had a lot of bone. She had soft hair. And she wasn't a little cow. She had some size to her and had a unique look. Anyway, those were unique animals that got me started. No two ways.
Absolutely. You know, Quattro, that steer that Quattro had that year in Fort Worth was something that I think wowed people in terms of where's this Horn Livestock deal headed. That steer, I think, is one that stands out in my mind anyway. He was a 419 derivative.
He's a heat wave 419. Actually, I'd sold Travis and Jill Otterstad those embryos, and they'd raised the calf. And actually, that steer that won, his sister is In God We Trust's mother.
Okay.
But yeah, his sister. So that's the same breeding the steer that was the grand steer at Fort Worth in 2012. His full sister is In God We Trust's mother, bred back to Business Done Right.
Right.
No kidding.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah. BDR, you know, that's another bull I think today that, gosh, Corey, there's probably still guys today shooting, firing away, making these BDR females and what they've done to this business. That's an interesting story you told me one day too about that bull.
I speak about it and make no bones about it. Hey, my knowledge that I have comes from the Lord above, without a doubt. He's blessed me to make me look way smarter than what I am, and every time that I get the Holy Spirit speaking in the back of your mind, I try to act on it. And the 2 or 3 times that I've not made the mistake and have acted on when I've been called upon, it's been successful for me. So that would have been one of the times. And that bull, I sold his mother. And when you had Wade and I on together, it's been 1.5 years or 2 years ago, I think. I think Wade and I talked about the first real argument we got into, and it was way before In God We Trust, or in that I'd bought a bull from him, and the bull was called Ammo 388. I flushed Ammo 388 from Wade. That bull I bought from Wade, he sold me half of the bull. I flushed it to one of my 3/4 blood Charolais cows I had when I was trying to make these genetics, and I raised this set of females that were really good. I didn't have my own enough cattle to have my own annual sales like I do now, like I sell them online. I sold in Donors Unlimited this bred female as a bred heifer, and in Donors Unlimited, Dr. Mims puts on every year, and she was an Ammo 388, 474. And he buys her for 10,250. And I think he sells her calf for 3,000 or 4,000 as a heifer calf in his club calf sale. But as she calved and had that first calf, he said, hey, what do I need to breed this female back to for her second calf? And hey, I opened my mouth and these words come out. I said, breed her to love in the business. Why I said this next part, I don't know, but the good Lord had a plan. He said, I told him, I said, breed her to love in the business. You get a bull, I'll buy for a bull. I said, don't cut him and I'll buy him for a bull. And I honestly can't tell you today why I told him that, but I did. And because he's a man of his word, he said, okay, we'll do that. I forgot I told him that. I was looking at his club calves in the spring of the following year. The wind was blowing about 75 miles an hour. I was tucked around on the backside of a creek feeder, and he come around there. The hay was all blown away from the steers. We was trying to look at them. Pen full of black steers, heat waves, good cattle, very successful. And he says, hey, your bull's out at the country. He's weaned and he's ready to be picked up. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, you told me on that female you sold me, if I breed her love in the business, if she had a bull, you'd buy it. He said, he's weaned and in the country. You can go get him. And I said, okay. And he goes, you know where the place is at. Just whip in there and get him. Call me when you get there. So I had a guy with me, Tony Myers, and we drove out there, and golly, there was two incredible painted heifers in the lot. I mean, incredible. And I call him on the phone and I say, hey, how much are these heifers? He said, they're not for sale. You don't like the bull? I said, the bull's good. I like him. I want him. He said, is 2,000 too much for the bull? I said, no, that's fine. And I said, how much are these heifers? He said, you don't like the bull. I said, I love the bull. He said, how's 1,800? I said, I want the bull. He's fine. I want to buy one of these heifers. Pick which one you don't want. I want one of them. And what I'm going to tell you, he's never really told. So I said, I'm the one that mated them for you, and I take no credit for being very smart. But I said, you called me the day you had the cow in the chute to flush her, and you asked how to breed her, and I told you Red Hawk, and you made these two females. I want one of them. It's that simple. What do you want for them? I'll give you what you want. He goes, I don't want to sell them. I'm not going to sell them. And I went, oh, my goodness, don't be like that. And he stuck to his gun. He wouldn't sell me the heifer. I did give $1,800 for business done right that day. And I drove home. And that bull did everything I ever asked him to do. He run in front of me every time I wondered if he was any good, and he just stroked off and cocked off and like, hey, I'm right here, dude. I'm your new man. Yeah. Every time that I wondered what I had, he stood right in front of me, and there it was. So we're to the point now where I collected him. I'm deciding whether I'm going to sell him in a bull sale or keep him. His semen looked good. I decided I want a little semen, so I'm going to take him to get him jumped. And I'm thinking, man, I can't sell this bull. He's about as unique looking thing as I've ever seen. He's TH clean. Wow. So I'm trying to convince somebody else he's good now. So I called Dr. Mims. Now, this is the mating. I'm telling y'all right now, this is the making of In God We Trust. I say, hey, this bull I got from you is a stud. He goes, you think? I said, I do. I think he's that good. I said, I'll tell you how good I think he is. I said, that 961 donor cow I got at your place. Yep. I said, I want you, I tell you how much confidence I got. We're already late in the game. He's put his August embryos, transferred to get his August born embryos in the cows. It's time to preg check. I said, I will take all of your open recips. You flush 961. They can be October borns. Flush. I'll transfer all the fresh ones to 961 and business done right. I want to do it a business done right. I'll buy all your pregnancies. You don't got to redo your cows. I'll buy the pregnancies. I want them. I want your recycles. He said, I'll do that with you. Once again, we speaking on how the good Lord will provide and take care. Hey, the reason In God We Trust works, his mother's, for lack of a better term, pretty tall and skinny, got big bone and hairy. That bull was born 2 weeks premature and was the most unique looking animal I'd seen since I've seen solid gold, except better, because we've moved on to a new kind. This thing does it, and he does it in a better way. And this was without a doubt the dangest looking thing I'd ever seen. And anybody that stopped by there go, what in the world are you going to do with that thing? I said, I don't know, but we're going to make more of them. I do know that. So the rest of the flush was born, and they were good, but they were bigger cattle, and they were good cattle, but they had higher performance and faster growing. And because of those things being 10 days to 2 weeks early, I believe in my heart that's why they generate. And they made the birth weights right. It's just made the cattle the optimum size that we're all shooting and looking for, and the right kind. The rest of the story is that's why there's just one of those, and there's not a bunch more each year. Hey, that thing, the good Lord decided that's the only one I needed. And that's I've made several more of them, and they've been successful, sold good, generated good, but nothing like that thing has. There's not been like him.
Absolutely.
In my place. But that's how he was made and how he was born, from business one done right to In God We Trust. And that was quite humbling, delightful to see something like that and to be able to raise something like that. It's very gratifying now, because as that has happened in what I've done over the last 10 or 15 years, the solid gold, BDR, selling females every year and bulls, and trying to kick out another bull and trying to put a bull battery together to make a living and feed my family and be as successful as we can be, and try to do the right thing and honor God in whatever we do and how we do it, and try to do it the right way. It's humbling to see how hard it really is and how it all fell in spot when that's never really was my plan. It was just happening. It was just happening. I think when you plan things, the good Lord goes, I'll show you. Chad Chaplin said something to me at one time when he was struggling on making decisions and what he needed to be doing and where he needed to be. And this is something I use this story time quite often when I tell people when it's not going good. I think the good Lord just kind of giggles up there and he looks down and he says, hey, boys, you guys are plowing the wrong field. You're nowhere near the right place that needs to be plowed. Get on over here, get your life back where it needs to be, and humble yourself and come on over here. This is what it's all about and where it's at. When we're worried about materialistic things and things we're trying to accomplish and things we're really trying to do, and at the end of the day, hey, it's very humbling to see sick people and people just it's hard to explain, but it is humbling to know the God we serve and what he can do and the things that he does for us daily. That's none of it's done intentionally in our way when we're trying to accomplish these things and we don't really have a plan. It's just all falling in our lap. Just that simple.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not very intelligent. I'm not very smart. I try to honor and do the right things and be all I can be daily and try to be the best I can be for my family every day. That's just what we do.
I was taken back a little bit when Grady and Hudson and I came and visited you last fall. I was taken back with something that you had a Hereford steer in the barn that year, and when we left there, I think it lit a fire under me and my boys for sure. There was a Hereford steer and a Denver steer in your barn at that time, and you know, both of the boys asked you, Well, you're not going to take one to Denver. You're not going to take one to Houston or Fort Worth or whatever. And you just said, no, we're just going to take one to Sand Hills and one to Denver, and that's it. And it wasn't until the ride home that those guys didn't even understand the success that you and your family have had at the Texas majors. Your daughter had won them all, and I'm bragging on you, I'm bragging on your family, but Sand Hills Hereford show is the only thing that they'd let her come to. And it lights a fire under you to see that. And Grady and Hudson left there probably fired up more than ever, to see that a family could have that kind of success in the big pond down there in Texas. But
when you think about it, it is very humbling. Hey, we never could win that show.
Right.
Avon had reserve grand twice, and Jagger did once. And
Yeah.
we could go again this year. And Avon said, "Dad, hey, that's good enough. I don't have to have a Hereford."
I got you. So what is happening today in Anson, Texas? Where's the focus today? Is it the next bull? Is it the next female? Is it the next Houston champion? What's the focus there today? Red is the craze, Corey. That's something Corey and I talk about. Is red is the craze right now in the business. Everybody wants red, and I know that there's some pretty wild-looking red bulls running around Anson, Texas. It's got some age on them. But where are you at today in terms of what do you see coming at this business in the next 3 to 5 years? And don't let my red comment happen. But
No.
I mean, what do you see?
Hey, we go day to day. We try to survive each day. I'm the red deal. I don't know what to think about that. I'm being real with you. Good cattle are good cattle. I like white ones. It's that simple. You breed a white one to a red one, you get a yellow one.
Yeah.
That simple as well. I don't know. I've said the red cattle aren't good enough. They're just that simple. Can we make better ones? Yes, we've got to make better ones. And good thing red and black go together. White and red go together. White and black go together pretty good. And it just, I don't know. I've got some bulls that I like that are red, and we're trying to make better ones. It's just hard to make those genetics, and they've been gone for so long that, and the colored bulls, when I call colored bulls, the white, yellow bulls are just, they're so dominant in how they're built. And, they're unique in their own way. And I'm not sure red one's ever going to take those out on what they're doing. Am I trying to make the next bull every day? Obviously, but you got to be realistic. We're trying to make a living every day, and when we're to the point now for what some of these things are worth, guys. Hey, when I started, my goal was to sell the very best steers I had so I could keep my very best heifers. For what the very best heifers are worth now, you've got to sell them or sell a piece of them. You have to. It's the only way to survive and thrive in the business. It's a consumer-driven industry, period. Hey, these guys want what they want. It's that simple. It's a consumer-driven industry. When the guys tell me, I want to get them bigger, I said, there's not one person that comes to my house to buy a show steer that says, hey, I want a bigger calf. They want a better calf. They don't want a bigger calf. They want a good calf.
Right.
You make them bigger, I think we're going the wrong way. You'll get you a bunch you can't sell, and then you won't like big cattle very well. Trust me, I've tried it. You got to make them better, not bigger.
Yeah, I agree. Brandon, before we start to wind this thing up here just a little bit, tell me something. The young guys that are listening, maybe it's an old guy listening to us here on this part 2 episode. Digging in here, tell me a setback that you learned from that propelled you forward. There was a time in your life somewhere that you felt like the water was here, and it was just that little bit got you back out of the water. Tell us that moment. I know it's vivid in your mind. Everybody seems to have one. or maybe not. I don't know. I mean, is
I
there
can
a
be
moment?
real with you. I know. I think the good Lord knows I'm not very strong and I'm pretty weak, and He's not really ever propelled me to be to that point. So I can't remember when I had such a bad day. I can tell anybody that asks at Horn Livestock, we don't have bad days here, man. We have good days and we have better days. Some days are better than others, but we don't have bad days. It's
You
that
told
simple.
me that just this week. You said we
I'm a
have bad
I'm
days.
a
We don't
positive.
talk. Right.
Hey, I'm a positive guy.
Yeah.
And I'm being real with you. The good Lord's been good to me, and He's protected me in so many ways. I ask for His guidance daily. That's that simple.
Hey,
I don't know. I don't know about I don't know what to tell you. If I can't remember any time. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, we've had a lot of downfalls and a lot of struggles. Most of the time, it's self-inflicted. When we would go through a dry spell showing, and I would tell the family, "Hey, we got to work harder. We got to do this and that." It was all pretty simple. We were all being selfish, and we weren't doing what we were doing daily for all the right reasons. And you get back to doing what you do daily for the right reasons, and that's serve who we serve and do what we do. That makes it way more valuable. And you will win in life, and you will win at a steer show, a heifer show, or whatever you choose to partake in. You'll win when you least expect it. When you're expecting to win and you talk about winning, hey, it's usually that much further away.
Yeah.
You don't, and you humble yourself, and you know you want to do the best you can do, and you make it not life or death, that's when things are good.
Right.
That's,
hey,
that's the
I'll,
fact.
I'll
Playing
flip
the
the
wrong
switch
field.
on you, Brandon. On the flip side, I see all them pictures in the background there. Is there a moment that you can remember in your memory that was the most memorable and special?
Oh, for sure. The Grand Steer at Fort Worth, when Avon had, that was about as memorable as it gets for me. And hey, what did I tell you all about expecting? Guys, that was our backup steer. And I still think it's the best one I've ever raised and the very best calf. And the steer we took to the show before we weighed him in was crippled coming off the trailer. And I told my guys at the barn to get old Bentley headed this way. He was going to get to make the team. And we finished clipping him at the show. And it's pretty special to me about that calf that I raised his mother, I raised his sire, I raised his sire's mother, and I raised the showman.
I mean, just the picture here. You talked about solid gold being competitive earlier, Corey. This thing here looks like he's just as real as ever today.
I mean, that was 4 years ago. But with that being said, guys, he was a special animal. He's in God We Trust 620, ultra stout, ultra unique, and that calf is kind of like me. He didn't have many bad days. He was always that unique.
So you were planning on slicking him for?
Yes, sir. We were going to show him at San Angelo the next week.
San Angelo, yep.
Absolutely. We were going to show him at San Angelo the next week.
How about that?
And Avon had not won that show, and that was our goal. Had a black baldy we got from bottom that we were going to show it and it's all got a weird way of working out. We had a black baldy we was going to show at Fort Worth, and I told Breck, my wife, and Avon, I said, hey, we're taking the wrong calf. And my wife said, shut up and leave it alone. We'll show that king next week. And I said, we're taking the wrong calf. They can't beat this silver one. And I've never talked like that to my family, ever. I don't ever tell things like that.
Right.
You know, I tell them this is a good one. I think he can win. But I don't ever say they can't beat this one. I said, they can't beat this silver one. I said, if he looks like this, they can't beat him. She said, we'll show him at San Angelo. He sure should be good there. Is what my wife said. I said, okay. So it was ironic that when we unloaded our calf that we took, that he could not, the steer could not move coming off the trailer after being in the trailer all night waiting in line, and then that calf looked like that. But what makes me the most proud about this is we've talked about it, and you guys talked about it at the start of the first segment about if I'm known for anything, it's to make slick-sheared cattle. And nobody thought I could raise one. I shouldn't say it like that. Nobody thought I could raise one. Who would have thought that I could have raised one? Not I, we. I don't like the word I. That we could raise one that could win at a level like that in the herd show against the toughest competition in the world.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's what makes that one special.
You bet. Well, hey, Brandon, we're going to wrap this deal up. When Brent mentioned this deal about humble beginnings in this series and said we were going to start with you, I just don't think we could have came up with a better person for who you are and the type of cattle you raise, the bull battery you put together. It's been awesome, man.
Well, it's very humbling to be invited to do something like this, and this is not something that I normally do. So I'm very honored, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I thank you guys for allowing me to come on here and tell a little bit about my story.
It just wouldn't be fair. Tell us what's coming up here for you this summer, the next few weeks on Show Circuit Online Sales with Clint. I know you've got, just feel like it would only be fair to you to talk about some upcoming sales of these genetics we've got to spend the last few weeks talking about. But tell us what's coming up, Horn Livestock opportunities.
We're going to picture here first part of next week. We're going to have a bred heifer sale here first part of July. I think July the 3rd on a Monday is we're going to have a bred heifer sale, and then going to move into some bred cows into July, first part of August. Try to sell a few bred cows, and I'm toying with messing with the idea of having Gerald. I know sold some this year. I have done it in the past. I see Gerald. I'm talking about Gerald Buck. I'm messing with the idea of selling some pairs in September. So August or September, I'll probably sell some pairs. And the reason for that is we're calving these cows early. We started feeding these things 2 years ago and feeding them everything they eat. And so these cattle that were calving last August, we speed them up. We've got May, June calves on them now. Bred them on natural heats, and it's hard to get our calves sold before that July deadline and get our bred females sold. Just wasn't feasible to do. We do all we can do every day, but it's still a time issue for me. So, and I got to feel good about what I'm doing and making sure we're making the right efforts and strides daily.
Yep. Well, good
so
deal.
thank you. In September, we're going to sell some pairs and then move into, in November, I'll have a fall bull sale.
Right.
Several of the bulls.
Yeah, well, good deal. Well, Brandon, thank you. Thanks for taking the time. I mean, I know it's been long for us. It's 2 segments. I just don't think we could ever really.
Like we just got started.
I'm telling you, I've enjoyed every ounce of it. So, hey, I appreciate you. Good luck going into the summer. Thanks for all you do, man.
God bless you guys, and God bless the folks listening. Good luck at the Summer Junior Nationals.
Absolutely. Take care, and thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Brandon.